Well, hello everyone. This is Fadi, and you are joining us live right now from our studios. And we have a treat for you. And I announced it at least for the last week that David Wood is going to be with us here. And indeed, David Wood is sitting right here next to me, and pretty soon you'll be able to see him. Now, today is going to be a live stream that is intended really to chat about different topics. We are going to also discuss a few things that we've already recorded, me and David, today at least, and tomorrow we'll continue with our recordings. But before we do this, of course, I want to encourage all of you to consider subscribing to our channel. And at the same time, if you have any questions, we will do our best, of course, to highlight those questions. And Super Chat is one of those great ways that will enable us to spot your questions immediately. Thank you again for joining us. And David, what a treat, brother. It's been a while, but I am so thankful that your time and your schedule allowed you to be here with us.
Most of what you're saying is going to make no sense because some people are watching on my channel. So for anyone who doesn't know, this is live on your channel, right?
That's right.
But then you've got these super smart nerds back there, and they made it go onto my channel as well.
Because
but here
they're
you are,
anti-Arab, right?
Here,
you know?
Yeah, they are. So you're talking about super chats when people can't super chat. So anyone who wants to super chat, you have to go over to Al Fadi's channel, Sierra International, and also, since it's on my channel, everyone would be expecting me to say TikTok, time to rock, and they click on it, and then they see you. They see you on there, and they think that you're a jihadi who slaughtered me and took over my channel.
Well, I mean, I was close to doing that before coming to Christ.
I must say, I don't blame you.
So, David, today we recorded a number of shows, and we focus on two topics, but I'm going to start with the hot button topic, Muhammad and Aisha. I mean, it's something that we hear about all the time, right? And it comes up from both sides. And our Muslim friends, as you know, insist all the time that Muhammad did nothing wrong. But based on what we have recorded so far, and I encourage people to subscribe if they want to get notifications when we release this video series soon, with the sources we looked at are Islamic sources, not sources written by Orientalists, not sources written by others who do not know anything about the Arabic language or the traditional stories of Islam. It is coming from the Hadith. It's coming from the Sunan, it's coming from Islamic sources that are very reputable. Could you share a little bit more with our viewers about some of these things that we've discussed?
Oh yeah, so basically we're out here with Al Fadi. We're making a series of videos. We're talking about other topics as well, but we're making an entire series of videos about Muhammad and Aisha. So how old was she? Had she reached puberty? And then going over responses to Muslim objections, like, what about Mary? What about Rebecca? What about all these things? Right. As well as mistranslations of hadiths that some people use to try and argue that she had reached puberty. So that's what we're doing out here. And we just recorded a bunch of videos. We'll record a lot more before I head out tomorrow. But those videos will be on Al Fadi's channel. So be sure to subscribe to his channel if you want this entire series on Muhammad and Aisha. And good to have you to break down the Arabic on some of these passages that are being distorted deliberately, right? Like when your average Muslim in the West reads a passage saying that Aisha had reached puberty, right? You know that it's a mistranslation, but your average Muslim probably doesn't know. So I don't think when a Muslim uses one of these passages, and there's only two that I'm aware of, when your average Muslim in the West uses one of these passages and say, you see, she had reached puberty, I don't think that Muslim is trying to be deceptive. He probably believes that. He doesn't know what the Arabic is. The problem is I see even Muslim scholars using mistranslations to convince people that Aisha had reached puberty. when they know what it says. They know that it's a mistranslation. They know that. And so we are in a very interesting time in history where this has become such a big issue. And it's one of the main issues that causes lots of people to start doubting Islam, because they're taught all their lives Muhammad is this perfect, morally perfect pattern of conduct for Muslims. And they don't think that he's ever done anything wrong, because they're told he's this wonderful guy and he's just wonderful in every way. And then they hear, wait, and he had sex with a prepubescent 9-year-old girl. Wait, what? Because that would be one of the most horrible things I can imagine you doing, and he's not supposed to be doing things like that. And so then you can go down the list of how they try to get around that issue. So they'll argue that she wasn't 9. Of course, they have to contradict all their sources when they do that. And then once you show that she was 9, they'll say, but she had reached puberty. And then you show that according to their sources, she hadn't reached puberty. And then, yeah, but there was a good reason. He needed her to remember hadiths and so on. You point out that those reasons have nothing to do with a grown man having sex with a prepubescent little girl. Then it's, what about Mary? And okay, well, you don't have that with Mary. Mary most definitely was not 9 years old. And then what they'll do is they'll start accusing everyone of being a pedophile, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's, you're telling the truth about our prophet, so we'll lie about people in the Bible. And it's just, you realize what a hot button topic this is. And it's interesting. We've been going into detail. Look what we got here.
And I want you to, in a second, to read from this. And you might want to explain to people what is this.
Want me to break it down? Let's see if I can remember.
Just let them know what is this.
Okay. Yeah, so we talk about this. This is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, called the DSM-5 for short, because it's the DSM 5th edition. So this is the standard work in diagnosing mental disorders. So you look up a mental disorder like antisocial personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder, or in this case, pedophilic disorder.
Right.
You look it up and it says this is how you would diagnose someone. In other words, if you're wondering if this person has this disorder, here are the criteria that the person would have to meet in order to qualify for this disorder. And we actually went through the criteria and show that Muhammad, not only does he meet the criteria, he absolutely crushes the criteria, right? And so notice it's Muhammad, according to the standard work in mental health disorders, as we've shown in a video, meets the definition of a pedophile in every way. In every way. This is amazing
stuff. Would you like to read it for them?
Oh, yeah. I believe it's almost page 700.
Again, we thank everybody for joining us right now. Thank you for the moderators, by the way. Thank you for those who are joining us through also Act 17 Apologetics, David's channel. And we really don't have a specific topic, but we encourage you to ask questions, whether related to what you're hearing or anything really you want to share with us. Ask me or ask David. Hopefully it's something related to the topic that we're passionate about, refuting arguments about the Islamic arguments or things related to the Bible and so on and so forth. So, well, the question that we were asking in one of these shows that we recorded, can Muhammad qualify to be a pedophile? Well, let me, let David now show you what the DSM-5 says about this disorder.
So this is page 697 of the DSM-5, and we have the criteria, the diagnostic criteria for pedophilic disorder. So if you want to say that someone has this disorder, someone is a pedophile, here are the criteria. It's A, B, and C, 3 of these. Mm-hmm. A, over a period of at least 6 months, recurrent, intense, sexually arousing fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors involving sexual activity with a prepubescent child or children, generally age 13 years or younger. So, behaviors involving sexual activity with a prepubescent child, generally age 13 years or younger. So, check on that one. Mm-hmm. Because Muhammad was having sex with Aisha for several years, right, when she was still younger than the age of 13. And even before that, you could put fantasies in there when he believes that Allah is giving her to Muhammad as a present. Sick stuff. Then we have B, the individual has acted on these sexual urges, or the sexual urges or fantasies cause distress or interpersonal difficulty. Well, they don't seem to have caused Muhammad distress, but he definitely acted on the sexual urges, so B gets a check. He meets that criterion. And C, the individual is at least age 16 and at least 5 years older than the child or children in criterion A. So they want to put that there because they want to say, okay, if it's a 9-year-old attracted to another 9-year-old, it doesn't mean you're a pedophile, right? They want to say you have to be at least 16 and at least 5 years older. Now, was Muhammad older? Was he at least 5 years older?
He was 45 years older. They just missed it here.
He was 45. He wasn't just 5 years older. He was 45 years older. And so that's what Muhammad absolutely crushes these criteria. And so according to the standard work in diagnosing mental health disorders, we can say, beyond a doubt, Muhammad has had pedophilic disorder.
Let me put it in perspective. Muhammad was 45 years of age when Aisha wasn't even born yet. Okay? Folks, think about it. 45 years of age and Aisha wasn't born. When he was 46, she was a 1-year baby girl. Do the math. He was 51 years of age, according to Islamic sources, when he proposed to marry her, and 54 years of age, and she was 9 when he consummated the marriage. You see the picture, folks? This is why it is disturbing, and this is why the DSM acknowledges this is pedophilic basically disorder, mental disorder, not just any disorder. Now, maybe Muhammad should have consulted with a counselor at that time to see what's going on, but Allah approved of his action.
Yeah, he gets a thumbs up from Allah. And another thing to put it in perspective, I posted on Twitter one day that when Aisha was 16, she would have celebrated her 10th wedding anniversary. When she's 16, that would have been her 10th wedding anniversary because he married her when she was 6.
Right.
And consummated at 9.
Right.
This is stuff. This is wild stuff.
I know. I think I saw a super chat from far away because this is like 2 miles away from me.
That just looks like a super sticker.
I do not know which. I think it's Timothy that had a question about Westerners, I think. So if we can scroll down again. Yes, there it is. And would like really just to see the question again. Is Westernized Islam still a high control group? I'm not really so sure what you mean by this, but I think I can assume you're saying that the Western side, Muslims in the West, I should say, somehow to try to change the narrative. Is that your understanding from this question, maybe?
I'm not sure. I don't know what I don't know.
But let's assume that's the intent. I mean, what he's saying is what Yasser Qadi was saying. For instance, there is Islam in the West and Islam in the East. And apparently, according to Yasser Qadi, the Islam in the East can talk about things differently than Islam in the West. Islam in the West tends to always water down things, maybe even use, biblical arguments to try to defend things or try to water down things. But Islam in the East, I mean, if you were to ask a Muslim or a clerk in the East about the age of Aisha, they won't blink an eye. Yes, she was 9. That's it, end of discussion. Why? Because our sources said so. You come to the Islam in the West, and somehow the clerks in the West, they try to explain away, oh yeah, she was 9, but, this is why. Or Mary was this age, or Rebecca was that age, and all of a sudden you have different ways of explaining it. Have you noticed this maybe in your debates or your interactions maybe?
Oh yeah, and fortunately, it's much more common to admit the truth than it was like 12 years ago. 12 years ago, almost everyone you'd run into would say that, no, Aisha was a fully grown woman. She was 18 or 19 or 21 or something like that. Almost everyone said that because they could get away with it because there were so few people who knew what was in the sources, right? So when someone says, hey, did Muhammad have sex with a 9-year-old girl? No, right? You know that person doesn't know what's in the sources, so you can say whatever you want. In fact, I have to point out, the first time I heard that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl was from a Christian who said he'd read it, and I was thinking, there's no way. There's no way that happened. He would be endlessly ridiculed for something like that. I don't hear that from anyone except this guy. Someone's making this stuff up. And then it was in discussions with Nabil where I started going and reading what's in the sources, and I was like, this is all over their sources. It's all over the place. Why is no one talking about this, right? And so you've gone through these different stages where at first it's no, that's not in our sources. We have no idea how old she was. She was probably much older. And fortunately, we've been able to spread what's in their sources. And so now, well, yes, but she had reached puberty. And so now we're working on making it common knowledge that according to their sources, she hadn't reached puberty. And that according to the Quran, you can have sex with a prepubescent girl. And so now we're making that common knowledge so that their well, she'd reached puberty response won't work. And so, it's just interesting because Muslims are really trying to defend Muhammad on this point, but it is it's going to be very hard for them to continue raising young Muslims to believe that Muhammad is this perfect moral example in every way, and yet simultaneously, they're defending the idea of having sex with a prepubescent 9-year-old girl. It's going to be very difficult to do.
Yep, absolutely. And I saw someone from your channel asking if we're taking questions. Absolutely, we are taking questions. Please go ahead and either put Acts 17 Apologetics or Sira International for us to know that you're asking questions. And Timothy came back and tried to clarify his question. Timothy, I still want to know, what do you mean by high control group? If you can clarify that for us, hopefully we can address that as well for you. Let's see if there is a question here.
That's a good question.
Go ahead if you want to read it. Yeah.
So it says, Squat Bench Deadlift says, Commander Wood, what is the difference between apologetics and polemics? Do you keep up with the content from Commander J. Smith? Lots of it is over my head. Now, J. Smith does me. There are some of us who just refer to positive apologetics and negative apologetics, right? So positive would be positive apologetics we would think of as presenting a positive case, and negative apologetics would be, it could include responding to other people's positions. But some people, and Jay does this, which is entirely correct, and so it might actually be more clear to say it this way, that apologetics would be a defense, because that's what the Greek word actually means. It was originally a legal term. It's a defense in court. The prosecution would bring charges against you, and the speech that you gave in defense of your own position was your apologia. So that's where we get the word apologetics. And so polemics would be attacking opposing positions. And so,
which is biblical also.
Yeah, totally.
Second Corinthians, talks about that. 2 Corinthians 10, 3-5. It talks about destroying strongholds.
So you can make that division. So in that sense, apologetics would be defending your position, and polemics would be attacking opposing positions. So hope that helps.
Yes, we have someone also on your channel was asking you to comment on chapter 65, verse 4, which we talked about it, basically.
Yep. So, Surah 65, verse 4, and people will see that we're going to use Muhammad hijab as an example. Surah 65, verse 4, the background of that verse, if you just read it and you have no idea what it's talking about and what it's responding to, it's not a very clear verse. It talks about the iddah for various wives. The historical background is that Allah had revealed that if you're going to divorce a wife, there's a waiting period. You have to wait some menstrual cycles before she can get married again. And that's a reasonable thing to do, because the idea was, if you divorce your wife and then she marries someone instantly, there's no waiting period. And what if she gets pregnant right then? How do you there could be some confusion about whose child the baby is. And so there's a waiting period. But then some objections arose. And it's, wait a minute, you say wait these menstrual cycles before the woman can get married again. What about girls who don't have a menstrual cycle? And there are basically 3 categories of wives who don't have a monthly menstrual cycle. And it was women who are too old, so they've gone through menopause, they don't have a monthly menstrual cycle. Girls who are too young, and then women who are pregnant. And so these issues were brought to Muhammad, and Muhammad says that, well, instead of waiting monthly menstrual cycles, wait 3 months. So just look at the calendar and wait 3 months, and then she can get married again. And you have Muslims who rail against this, but go to any of the commentators. What does it mean according to Ibn Kathir? Exactly what I just said. What does it mean according to Tafsir Jalalain? Exactly what I just said. What does it mean according to Ibn Abbas? Ibn Abbas gives the historical background where someone specifically asks, what about girls who are too young to have a monthly menstrual cycle? So he's specifically saying that this is referring to prepubescent girls. What do you have in Tabari? Same thing. What do you have in modern Muslim commentators like Maududi? The exact same thing. Maududi even says, since Allah allows you to have sex with a prepubescent girl, no one has the right to forbid it. You go to Sahih al-Bukhari. Bukhari uses that verse to explain Muhammad's relationship with Aisha, and he says specifically that it refers to a waiting period for girls who have not reached the age of puberty. And then, of course, we have our friend Muhammad Hijab, who says that if you did not go outside of the Quran, if you didn't know to go outside of the Quran for when you're allowed to have sex with a girl, he says that if you just went with the Quran, you would think that you can have sex with a 5-year-old. Because all it says is they haven't reached puberty. So he said, well, that would include a 5-year-old. So he thinks you need to go outside of the Quran to even get the idea that you should be careful about harming a girl. You have to go to the Hadith to even find out that you should be careful that you're not tearing open a little tiny girl. Right. But he says specifically, if you just went with the Quran, you'd think that you had sex with a 5-year-old. And he says you would conclude that an extreme form of pedophilia. And so this is just amazing. But notice what's amazing here. Allah says it. Muhammad exemplified it by actually having sex with a prepubescent girl. The greatest Quran commentators of all time, down to the 20th century, all say that this is referring to marrying, having sex with, and then divorcing a girl, all before she's reached the age of puberty. And then you have a modern popular da'i like Muhammad Hijab saying, yes, based on what the Quran says, a 5-year-old would be fair game. And yet, as the moment I say, this is what the Quran says, you liar, you racist, right, you Islamophobe, you bigot. And it's like, wait a minute, if I'm agreeing with all of your greatest scholars of all time and Allah and Muhammad and Bukhari, because he says that's what it means, if everyone, until we get to you, says that's what it means, I mean, is everyone an Islamophobe? Is everyone in the history of Islam, is every scholar in the history of Islam an Islamophobe because they all conclude this? That's very strange stuff.
Amen. In your channel, if you folks in the control room, please scroll down from David's channel. Someone was asking about the book of Revelation, chapter 7. And then I'm going to add, I think you're getting closer to it. Keep going, keep going.
I've got the apostate prophet calling me right now. Why are you calling me? Let me text him.
I'm not really so sure. I saw something about, here you go, that's it. So the question here is saying this, it's, at Act 17 Apologetics, at Sierra International, the question, do you think, folks, here you go. What do you think about the possibility of living in Revelation 7? I mean, I think the questioner is saying, are we living in Revelation 7? Well, I have to say this. If you look at Revelation 7, verses 1 to 8, it talks about the 144,000 Jews, and it lists certain tribes and lineages in there specifically. And then starting from verse 9 all the way to the end of the chapter, verse 17, it talks about all people from multitudes, from all tribes, all nations, all basically peoples, all tongues, or all languages. And many commentators will say it's during the tribulation time, the Great Tribulation. That's what the passage talks about there, specifically the Great Tribulation, not just any tribulation. And it appears that those are the martyrs, or most of them have died during that time. And they are the fruit, the harvest, basically, of the work of the evangelists, which is the 144,000 Jews. That's the common theme. So I would say if that's the view we're going to take, then no, we are not living in it yet, because we have yet to see that. And many will argue that the church has been already raptured before this event would take place. So this is my answer to that. David, you can add to that if you like.
I'm the last person to ask about.
Yeah, David is a heretic, so don't ask him questions like this. Now, there is a Jew.
It's not a heretical thing. It's that I don't really.
No,
I don't study end time stuff.
No,
I know. I'm just. I mean, for for people who would ask me a question about that, don't ask me about certain things, because I'm not an area I really study.
I appreciate you, brother. One person here on your channel appears to be a Jew, and he's saying the reason why he follows Judaism is because he's done his homework, and part of it was refuting Christianity. Would you like us to address that? You know, he's wondering basically why Christianity or why Christ.
Well, I mean, I can tell you my view, right? If Jesus is the one who rose from the dead, and as far as I can tell, he did. He was dead. That was a public event. Then he was alive again afterwards, and it wasn't just some hallucination or something like that. He was seen by multiple followers and by people who opposed him during his lifetime. So the Apostle Paul, I mean, was a Christian killer, and Jesus appeared to him. And Jesus' brother James didn't believe in him during Jesus' earthly ministry. Jesus appeared to him as well, and then James becomes a pillar of the early church. And so Jesus was dead, and then he appeared to his followers afterwards. He rose from the dead. If I'm going to listen to someone tell me about God, probably the guy who predicts performs these miracles, predicts his resurrection from the dead, and then rises. If I'm going to listen to someone tell me about God, I'm going to listen to that guy. But that's about as much detail as I would go into as far as Jewish objections to Christianity, because I deal with Islam and sometimes atheism. But I would encourage you to go to the videos of Michael Brown. I almost said Raymond Brown, but that's
Dr. Michael Brown. That's right.
Yeah, Michael Brown. But he's a Jewish believer in Christ, and so let us know what you think.
Yeah. Let's see if there are any other. It looks like there's a lot of questions. I'm just trying to keep track of it, and I'm not really so sure if the team can move it to the bigger screen. Maybe tomorrow, because it's just hard for me to read them from afar. So I need some help from you here. Not seeing anything. Yeah, I wanted just to see if there is anything. Someone is making a comment about Joel Richardson on my channel, saying he's the one that you follow for eschatology is good. So go to his YouTube channel. Again, we wanna be careful, folks, when we're talking about the Book of Revelation in particular. We have to be very careful. I mean, there are so many views out there. So if you're dogmatic about a certain view, then you're going to have a hard time really appreciating and understanding even certain passages. So we need to be very careful. We need to appreciate the fact that godly men have labored hard throughout the history of the church to make sense of some of these verses, signs, predictions, and so on and so forth. But that does not mean that they knew the future or we know the future. All we do is we just try to report what some of these commentators are saying, and we need to be very careful not to take a certain stance, because you're going to be disappointed if that's the way you're going to look at things, because something is going to happen tomorrow that will go against what you were thinking, and that will cause you now to doubt your faith. And also, let us focus on the essentials, right? You know, what's more important and when it comes to our faith in Christ are the essentials, not the secondary ways of looking at other things as well. We have a super chat here saying, other than donating, what can we do to help ex-Muslims? Well, I mean, I'm not really so sure what you mean by ex-Muslims here, but if it is those who left Islam, they're being persecuted. There are many organizations out there that can shelter them, can help them, can witness to them, hopefully. And I'm praying that they're ex-Muslims and followers of Jesus. And of course, discipleship is one of the best things you can do for anyone who leaves Islam and comes to Christ, because many of them, of course, live in very harsh environments or face persecution. They don't have the luxury that you and I have sometimes to go to a church building and sit down and listen to a pastor or have a Bible study. Oftentimes they rely on things online. That's why we do the videos that we do. That's why in my Arabic channel I do a lot of discipleship material, because I want to reach out to those who are ex-Muslims in the Arab world that they don't have the church to go to, a church building, if you wish. What can you say to that, David?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to, there are ex-Muslims who are in all kinds of different positions, right? There are ex-Muslims who are in the West and they've got jobs and so on, and they're not going to have many problems. But there are ex-Muslims who are in totally different positions and in very dangerous places. So it's going to depend on the situation. But if you ever have an opportunity to help an ex-Muslim get out of a Muslim country where he might be sentenced to death, then that might be a thing to do there. But in general, I mean, it depends on your. Here, there would be different answers, depending on whether you're an atheist or a Christian, anyone in general who has the opportunity to help a fellow human being should. But I mean, Christians are specifically told by Jesus that there are situations where they will have to give up their homes and their families and so on. So it's not always just a situation of a Muslim is at risk of being killed or something like that. Very, very often, they're giving up their families, right? And just think about that situation where all of a sudden, because that's the situation Nabil was in, although he did end up having a continuing relationship with his family. But I've heard from Muslims who say when they converted, it was, their parents said, don't come back here until you're a Muslim again. So that can be pretty devastating if you're close with your family and all of a sudden you have no more family. And so I would encourage definitely Christians, but really anyone in general, to let your ex-Muslim friends know, hey, if you're in a situation where you're going to have to give up your family, guess what? We're going to be your family now.
Right. There is a great question in your channel here by Bob Jones, asking about the usual fallacy that Muslims will use. If you want to address that, David, because you deal with it all the time, and I can elaborate also.
Well, so the question: when confronted with horrible facts about Islam, Muslims respond with, "You don't speak Arabic," or "You're reading a wrong translation. Seems like you can't win this argument." Yeah, that's a massive deflection, right? And you can point out there are people like Fadi, there are people like Christian Prince who are fluent in Arabic, and so they see the same sort of problems. You can point out that we're getting this directly from their Muslim sources. But one thing that is absolutely central when this objection comes up, you don't speak Arabic, and therefore you can't understand it. Well, great. If Islam can only be understood in Arabic, how can this be the religion for all people, right? I'm on the highly educated end of the spectrum. I have multiple bachelor's degrees, multiple master's degrees, a PhD. If I can't understand your religion, then what good is that? What good is it for humanity, right? Notice what they would be saying, and this is important to get. They're saying, because you don't know the original language, therefore you can't understand it. Well, great. Why should I convert to something that I can't understand? Oh, no, you can trust what I say about it. Well, what you're telling me is I can't understand it for myself. I have to believe what you're telling me about it. Well, if I'm just believing what you're telling me about it, why wouldn't I believe what ISIS is telling me about it? Why wouldn't I believe what ex-Muslims who speak Arabic are telling me about it? Why wouldn't I believe what Christians are telling me about it? Why would I believe what you're saying and not the Shia? Why would I believe the Sunni and not the Shia? Why would I believe the moderate and not the radical? In order to know who's telling me the truth about Islam, I would have to know what it teaches to know who's lining up with it. But according to our Muslim friend, we can't know what it teaches unless you speak Arabic, and therefore we never know what to believe. If we never know what to believe about it, it obviously can't be the religion for all people, and we obviously can't be expected to just magically know that it's true. And so you're saying it's useless. If the Quran can only be understood in one language that the vast majority of humankind cannot understand. Great. Your book is useless. Thank you for agreeing. We're done.
Amen. And Gerard Perry saying Koranagami is the next big thing. Amen to that. I agree with you. So now we have also a comment from someone who keeps asking this question, asking you, David, to do a video refuting the scientific argument that Muslims are coming up with concerning ancient Egypt in Surah 44:29. Have you heard anything about that? I mean, if the questioner could summarize for us, what is this argument? Because I'm looking at the verse, and the verse is just talking about that heaven and earth did not really care for Pharaoh and his soldiers and didn't even shed tears for them. So what's the argument? I guess because they never cease to amaze me with this kind of stuff. Question by Timothy Bands. Thank you, Timothy, again for your super chat, saying, is Islam a cult? Why or why not? And here's my answer. I was a follower of Islam. Islam is a cult. There is no question about it. Here's why. First, in a cult environment, you will have, false teachings that contradicts truth. Okay, Islam contradicted a lot of the truth of Islam. In fact, John of Damascus considered Islam to be a form of heresy of Christianity. There is always a leader that everybody wants to follow or at least listen to, and this leader gets elevated to a status, it's almost like God. Islam has that qualification. In a cult, you are really stuck with the cult, and if you dare to leave the cult or speak against the cult, your life could be in danger. Well, that's exactly what Islam does. And so just by looking at these, elements that I just mentioned, it qualifies. You want to add to that, David? Oh. So we have another super chat. Good resource, free books on Sikhs, woman, jihad, Arabic, English, side by side. What is this? Is this like we have an advertisement here? That's great, fantastic. So let's look at a question here. What are some basic steps to witness to Muslims, and what is the most effective way? David.
I would say start by asking questions.
Exactly.
I generally recommend starting with lots of what questions, like what do you believe about this? What do you believe about God? What do you believe about Jesus? What do you believe about Muhammad? What do you believe about the Bible? What do you believe about the Quran? So that you understand that person, where that person's coming from, what that person's views are, because you will get some different answers from Muslims. So start there, and then as time goes on, transition into some why questions. Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that about Jesus? Why do you believe that about the Quran? Why do you believe that about the Bible? And then you start getting to that person's reasons for why he believes these things. And once you know that person's reasons for believing various things, well, then you're in a great position to start having some questions about the reasons for believing in Christianity or Islam, and to get into some discussions about that. And also, it's a good place to start, especially if you don't know a lot about Islam and don't know what you're going to discuss. Lots of people make the mistake of thinking, well, I have to know everything about this in order to get started. No. Notice, I mean, suppose Al here is a very knowledgeable Muslim, and I'm a Christian who knows nothing about Islam, but I'd like to have a discussion with him, but I don't know anything about it. So what am I going to do? Notice I could start asking him questions about what he believes, and he would start telling me. And then I could ask him about his reasons for believing these things. And then I could just say, well, hey, I've never studied, like suppose he says, I believe it because the miraculous preservation of the Quran, it's a miracle, perfect preservation. Suppose he says something like that. And then I could say, hey, I've never studied that. I've never looked into it. Would you mind if I actually went and did a little research on that and then got back to you? He'd be happy. He'd be happy if I was going to go do some research, because he would think probably that the evidence is going to confirm his position. Notice, now I go and study. I don't have to know everything. I have to study one specific topic. And then once I've studied that one specific topic, then I come back and say, hey, you said perfect preservation right down to the letter. What do you do with this? What do you do with that? What about these verses that are eaten by a sheep? What about this? What about that? And then it will go from there. And lots of these issues will transition. If you're talking about from a Christian perspective, lots of these issues will transition into a discussion of the gospel, right? Because if you're asking a Muslim what he believes about Jesus, and he says, here's what I believe about Jesus, Well, then you start asking, what are your reasons for believing that about Jesus? And I say, wait, I've got reasons for thinking something else about Jesus. Then you get into a discussion, and so that's how I would recommend.
Yeah, well said.
Going
Well
about it.
said. I agree with that. It looks like the person came back now clarifying that apparently there is a phrase in this verse in chapter 44, verse 29, that Muslims are saying it is found in the grave of one of ancient pharaohs. And how did Muhammad know about this? Well, I mean, just my friend, just read what you just said. It's a grave of an ancient pharaoh that lived and died before the time of Muhammad. Muhammad popped into the scene. He copied and pasted a lot of information. I don't see any problem with Muhammad, if indeed heard something like this, to mention it. It could have been stories that circulating around about what happened. So I'm not really seeing any miracle in here.
Yeah, and I'd have to see. I would have to see the evidence, because I'm talking like what 99% of the time they tell us, oh, and it's a miracle, and this has been confirmed. It's just a lie. It's just something someone made up, and they all passed it around without bothering to check it out. It's like the miracle of Pharaoh's body. And it turns out to be the wrong Pharaoh, and he's not the Pharaoh of the Exodus. And the verse doesn't even say that Allah is going to preserve your body. It says Allah is going to preserve you in your body, which makes it sound like He's going to make you survive. And actual autopsy of that mummy that they say was Pharaoh he was drowned. He was drowned by the sea. That Pharaoh had such severe medical problems. Severe arthritis. This guy was bedridden. Before his death. He wasn't dying chasing the Jews in the Red Sea. So notice, every single thing about this supposed miracle is wrong. They just make things up, knowing that if you just tell your followers it's a miracle, they'll all run around and spread it, and no one is going to say, hey, let's go ahead and look this up first.
Yeah. Jack is saying, how do you respond to the fact that Muhammad, knowing about Arabia being green in the past as proof for his prophethood? Arabia is green? This is the first time I've heard that Arabia is green. I lived in Arabia. It cannot get any brownish than the way it is, actually. It's desert. So thank you. Right there, you proved to me that Muhammad didn't even have a clue what he's talking about. In fact, you just proved that maybe Jay Smith is correct. Muhammad is not from Arabia, actually. But even if it is, let's say it's a hadith that said this, these things are fabricated or added at a later time. The hadith collection itself of Bukhari happened to be written allegedly 240 years after the time of Muhammad. And if I want to prove to you that Bukhari did write something, the earliest manuscript of Bukhari is about 500 years after the time of Muhammad. So how can we even say something like that? That's really my short answer to that. Someone is asking you, David, BMW 635 CSI. Hey, BMW, I haven't been seeing you on my channel. Now you go to David's channel. Why, you think like BMW 635 is accepted in there? But that's okay. So the question is, what are the key pillars of Sharia that we need to learn and be aware of? Okay, I'll comment after you. Go ahead.
I mean, you might want to be aware of the various punishments. Some of the key things that we would want to be concerned about is, something like the death penalty for apostates, because that's something that would, affect all of us. That the idea that husbands can beat their wives into submission, things. I mean, these are all the basic things that we discuss pretty regularly on our channels, so that people understand, hey, this is the law that people are openly advocating on YouTube. I mean, people like Ali Dawa, yeah, we're gonna kill you, and we'll be watching, and we're proud of that. And so, yeah, they're basically anything that the apostate prophet or I talk about pretty regularly, the penalties. And I mean, if you're a Christian or a Jew, or if you're not a Christian or a Jew, if you're a Christian or a Jew, you would have the option of being given dhimmi status, so of paying the jizya in acknowledgement of your inferiority, in which case you're going to be a second-class citizen. and there are going to be all sorts of limitations on what you're allowed to do. And you're going to have to pay money to acknowledge your inferiority. But if you're, Hindu or atheist, you don't even have that option. It's going to be convert or die. And so I would say that.
And I want to just add to what David says. By the way, I mean, Sharia, of course, deals with a number of things. It deals with relationships, rituals, religious, basically matters, business transactions, punishments. Believe it or not, marriage is considered to be a business transaction according to Sharia. Punishment, like, for instance, capital punishment, things like that. Do you know that even murder is not considered to be a capital punishment, actually, because you can pay blood money under Sharia? But also, there are multiple schools of Sharia. I mean, if you're a Sunni, you have 4 schools. If you are a Shia, you have 3 schools. So it depends which school of Sharia are you following and how they interpret these kind of decrees or judgments or punishments and so on and so forth. We have thank you, Connor Harris, for your super chat. A question is, what advice would you give to the casual person who studies Islam and wants to help the world by fighting the evil it causes, but doesn't know how? Connor, it's a loaded question. How do you fight, the evil of Islam? I tell you, by doing things like us, channels, taking the things that we do and sharing it with others, educating people, bringing awareness about it. But also, don't judge all Muslims, by the way, because as David mentioned earlier, I mean, not all Muslims know about things. They just take for granted what they're told. They're zealot for their faith, so you can't blame them for insisting that you're wrong and they're right. So we have to be careful not to spread rumors also that can taint the Muslims everywhere as if they are bad people. They're made in the image of God. Jesus died for them. So we need to think of them as souls that deserve to be saved. And these are just a couple of things that I can think about. What else can you add to that?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there are all kinds of things you would do, but I would, especially people who aren't, doing something full time or something like that. It's very simple to just learn something and then to share it with other people. I mean, if you learn one thing about Islam, but you share it with other people, you can spread a lot of information about Islam. I mean, suppose you just learn about Muhammad's relationship with Aisha, and then in various discussions you say, hey, did you know that Muhammad had married a 6-year-old girl and then had sex with her when she was 9? Did you know that? Notice, you don't even have to be attacked. You don't even, he was a pedophile. You can just say, hey, did you know that? Did you know that? And if you can actually defend it, when people go, no, there's no way. Or the death penalty for apostates. Just keep in mind, right? Everyone thinks, how am I going to go out and change the world? Well, you can change the world like one person at a time, one fact at a time. If a million people tell one person something they know, all of a sudden it's 2 million people. You've just doubled the amount of people who know something. So I'd say most people should just keep it simple. Learn something, learn a couple of facts that you can actually defend, and then share those when you get an opportunity.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, we're going to take a few more minutes to wrap it up. I want to welcome Rob Christian. Rob Christian, thank you so much, brother, for being here, taking the time out of your busy schedule. I saw you earlier on David's channel. By the way, these 2 channels are in front of me, so you must have basically jumped from one screen to the other. But all to say is someone here by the name Beloved and Loved saying, who is this Al Fadi? Thank you for asking that question. I am the Arab version of 007, by the way. So in case anyone wants to know. I'm a former Muslim from Saudi Arabia, and I have my own channel, by the way, which is Sierra International. That's why I'm honored to have David here with me. And we collaborate together in many ways. So hopefully you're enjoying what we are doing here. And thank you to Be Free for your super chat. We have a couple of minutes left. If there are any pressing questions, folks, go ahead and ask them right now. Otherwise, we will be live again tomorrow. And don't hold me to this, but hopefully it will be at 2 o'clock or around 2 o'clock Eastern time, meaning New York times. But we will announce it because sometimes with recording and things like that, our schedule might shift. But we will be doing this tomorrow, Lord willing. We're going to even have a surprise guest with us that will be joining us, but we'll wait until tomorrow. Any other questions, folks, for us? David, any last minute things you want to share with?
No, just yeah. Be sure you subscribe to Al's channel if you want this series coming up.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. And I want to encourage, by the way, many of you, if you are considering supporting David. David, can they support through PayPal or Patreon?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So PayPal, Patreon, same thing for us.
Don't worry, don't worry about me right now. Yeah, worry about you.
I mean, I have a goal really to raise 100 patrons, I should say, through Patreon this year. So far, successfully, the Lord blessed me with 10, so we're ways from reaching our goal. But the thing about Patreon is, like, every month a number of our patrons drop, sometimes just because their credit cards expired and things like that. And some of them been around for a couple of years and they feel like they've done their part, and we're thankful. We're blessed by that. So these are great ways to help us, help our channels, and allow us to even do the things that we are doing. So thank you so much in advance. And again, if there are any last-minute questions here, I would like to entertain them. Otherwise, we are going to wrap it up pretty soon here. There is a question for you, David. I found a new Muslim claim of finding Muhammad in the Bible, Genesis 49:10. Wow. Genesis 49:10, the prayers of Jacob. Are you looking at it?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're going to look at it right now.
The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples.
So Muhammad is from the tribe of Judah.
Yeah, well, I believe that they're basing this on a different translation. So that's the English Standard Version. Let me go to another one.
Talking about the jizya?
Yeah, well, they're going to say that. Let me find a translation that maybe King James. I think this is one that talks about Shiloh, because I've seen that before. Oh yeah, so. Verse 10 in the King James and in some other translations, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall be the gathering of the people be. Well, Shiloh was a city, right? Shiloh was a city back then.
That's right.
It was the place where they set up for worship before
that's true.
Before the temple, before the mount in Jerusalem.
That's right. David set up his tent, his Ark of the Covenant, and the tent of worship in there too.
Yeah, and so it's just common to pick anything that they can try to translate. And so what are you going to say? Shiloh, it's talking about Muhammad. If you change all the letters, you get Ahmed or something like that. And come on, it's kind of ridiculous at this point.
Yep, absolutely.
So no. Wow.
Well, I mean, again, our Muslim friends, I don't blame them. They're zealots for their faith. Sadly, they're going to listen to anything. Probably a sheikh mentioned it, and they jumped all over this. So again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We're going to wrap it up right now. Join us again tomorrow during live stream, and we will do more live streams, of course. Moving forward, of course, we can do live streams from anywhere. And I brought David multiple times to my live stream, so hopefully we can continue to do so. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us. And thank you for taking the time to join us in both channels, Acts 17 Apologetics, that's David's channel, and Sira International, that's my channel. Please consider subscribing so that you can be notified about new videos that we release weekly, and especially this video series that we recorded today about Aisha and Muhammad. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. This is Al Fadi, over and out. God bless. Take care.